All right. Welcome back to the Money Advantage podcast. This is Rachel Marshall. I'm here with Bruce Wayner, my co-host, and some fabulous return guests, Jon and Missy Butcher. Welcome to the show, Jon and Missy.
Hey, great to be here.
Hey, guys. Good to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's dig into a topic that I think is really important and not talked about often enough. And in this whole concept of leaving and building a legacy and family wealth, that can seem these giant concepts that maybe feel almost out of reach. But you guys have done some amazing work with LifeBook. You're the CEOs of LifeBook. You've built this amazing dream life. You're coming to us live from your Hawaii home that you've built, and you have this beautiful life that you've designed. And I want to talk with you about how designing your life in all of these different categories of wealth really creates family wealth. And so as we come into the show, I want to let our audience know that you guys have been here before. You've talked about your backstory and what led into the creation of LifeBook. And you really were just looking for a way to live your ideal life, and you were able to do it. And then people started asking you, how do I do this too? And it turned into this giant company called LifeBook that helps people all around the world do amazing things, right?
That's correct.
So let's today really more so dig into what this whole idea of family wealth means, specifically in the area of if you are wanting extraordinary relationship with your kids, and you want to have a family that's fun, you want to have memories that you're creating together, you want to have that strong family. How do you get there from a LifeBook perspective? And so that's what we're going to be asking you guys about today, the magic behind what you guys have created.
Perfect.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and kind of just jump in first. How would you define wealth, this giant concept that many people just struggle to get their hands around?
We have a super simple definition of wealth. Wealth to us is an abundance of anything desirable. An abundance of anything desirable. That can be love, that can be money, that can be physical health and physical fitness, that can be emotional well-being. It's just being surrounded by a surplus of all the good stuff in any category.
And it also has to do with an abundant mindset as opposed to the scarcity mindset. We've talked about that before. Just having that perspective coming at the world of, there's enough. I'm enough. There's enough. I'm always cared for. It's that creates a bed for wealth to grow.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know that it's so interesting when you're talking about abundance of anything desirable. I mean, that's far more than money. And I think loud and clear, I think if our listeners, just as a opening the curtain for what this conversation is going to be all about today, wealth is so much more than money, which means then that family wealth is going to be a lot more than a family that has a lot of money. So let's kind of dig into.
Let me just real quick, Rachel, because I want to make a distinction. I don't think that money is wealth at all. Money represents. That's a slight distinction, but it's an important distinction. Wealth is physical. Wealth is different than money. Money is literally a standard of valuing wealth. That's where people get confused. You spend your life chasing dollars. You're chasing the representation of wealth, not the wealth itself. This table is wealth. That rock wall behind us is wealth. This is wealth. Physical wealth. You can have emotional wealth. You can have well-being in wealth. Money simply represents wealth. It's not the same thing as wealth. You could be alone on a desert island with $1 trillion and you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. You wouldn't be able to eat it. You wouldn't be able to live in it. You wouldn't be able to do anything with it. On its own, money has zero value. The only value that money has is representing wealth and allows us to trade our goods and services more easily. So that's an important distinction that most people don't understand.
Jon, I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that we try to tell people because they chase the money, and that's the stressful part of it. Exactly. They're always chasing the money. And what you're saying is, I believe this. What you're saying is that the money is only a representation, and that was why money was developed, right? To make it easier to get goods and services. Because before that, there was just simply bartering. Yes. And if you didn't have what the other person wanted, you could not barter with them. And so that's how money was developed.
Where we get
So that's a
confused,
really great
where we get
conversation.
confused, because money is a standard of value, because it was invented so that we could trade goods and services more easily. The more we accumulate, we can buy a lot of stuff with that wealth, or with that money. That money gives us freedom. That money gives us the ability to acquire wealth. But that money is not wealth itself, and that's a big thing to understand, because that shifts your priorities. Well, we'll go a little bit deeper into that, I'm sure, in this conversation.
Yeah, that'd
Yes,
be great.
I love that. And I'm going to use that as a jumping off point to our next question here. But the idea you mentioned, you could have $1 trillion alone on a desert island. That does not guarantee that you're going to have a healthy marriage relationship. That doesn't guarantee you're going to be socially fulfilled. That doesn't guarantee emotional health. That does not guarantee quality relationships with your kids and your grandkids, which is really, I think, at the core, what all of us really want, not just the money. So let's dig back into, what would you say in terms of designing your ideal life? What would you say are the core values of your home?
The core values of our home and our family that we've raised our kids. Let me do this. Let me just step back real quick and give the LifeBook framework, so that
please do.
And how we came to our understanding of what wealth is, how we decided on the core values of our home, how did we do all those things. LifeBook is a personal development program that allows you to look deeply at the 12 most important areas of your life. And those areas are your health and fitness, your intellectual life, your emotional life, your character, your spiritual life, money, which is your financial life, your career, all your relationships, etc. And in each of these 12 categories, you ask yourself the same 4 questions. What do I believe about this category? What are my foundational beliefs that control my behavior in this area of my life, for better or for worse? Number 2, and hugely important, what precisely do I want in this area of my life? What do I want my love relationship to be like?
That's a huge question. Most people don't know. They just do not know.
That's one of the key questions as we go on. Thirdly is, why do I want that? What's the purpose behind that vision? And fourth is strategy. What do I need to get that? If that's what I want, and that's why I want it, what do I need to get it? So what we've spent the last 25, 30 years of our life doing is going more and more deeply into those 4 questions across those 12 categories of life. So when you ask what are the core values of our home, the way we got to those core values is we sat down and we thought about our family life. We thought about that incredibly important category of parenting, raising kids. And we asked ourselves, what are our beliefs? What is appropriate to the kind of extraordinary family that we want to build? What precisely do we want in this area of our life? Why is that important? And what do we need to do to get it? And so at the end of that exploration, the 3 values that we decided to focus in on for the last 25 years as the core values of our home are the following. Freedom is number 1. That's our number 1 value in life. Self-responsibility is number 2.
It's the other side of the coin.
Other side of freedom.
So true.
And the third is a Japanese word for love, but it can also mean mutual respect. It's a specific flavor of love. It's not romantic love. It's a love for your fellow man that would ensure that you would never tread on their rights, and you would not allow them to tread on yours. So it's this loving mutual respect. So those are the 3 fundamental values of our home, and how that plays out in everyday life. Kids, you've pretty much got the freedom to do what you want and to say what you want in this house within guidelines. We don't have very many rules, but we mean the ones we have, and everyone knows what they are. So we give our kids as much freedom to express themselves as possible. But number 2, you will take responsibility for the words that come out of your mouth and the actions you take. You will not assign blame to others for the mistakes that you make. You're going to man up and take responsibility for the choices that you make with your freedom. And third, you will not ever violate the rights of the people around you, nor will you put up with other people violating your rights.
And these 3 basic principles, basically, they're the foundation, because everything comes from that. Love, compassion, kindness, understanding, all the things that you want.
It's like a platform that you can just grow from.
Because something about Jon and I is that we love to simplify things. Simplify things down to this perfect little essence of a nugget, so that So it doesn't get convoluted. So it's like our kids know those 3 rules. It's basically freedom, self-responsibility, and love. So everything else sprouts from that. So it's like they know if they've crossed one of those boundaries. I mean, everybody knows. It's like you can only have so much freedom. You have as much freedom as you can responsibilities.
Exactly.
So often, and it has to be balanced, right? So they know when they're out of balance and they feel it, and immediately we take their freedoms away, and then they get to their responsibilities.
And one of the things about being so clear about family values like that, Rachel, is when our kids break the rules, they know, like sometimes they will consciously break the rules. Like I remember one time our 17-year-old daughter took a bottle of wine out of our wine room, which was naughty, but her boyfriend was over and she wanted to have a romantic dinner. She literally left us a note that said, "Mom and Dad, I broke the rules. I took the bottle of wine. I had an amazing night. I know I'm going to get punished for this, but I just want you to know that," right? And so, yeah, Jess,
she actually didn't get punished. She did not get punished for that because it was so
yeah.
Like, that's a really good reason to take a bottle of wine. Well done. Anyway.
So those are our home rules that have really, I mean, for us, you guys, everybody's different. Everyone really has to figure out their own operating philosophy that works best for them. But for us, freedom, self-responsibility, and mutual respect have been a magic formula for raising our kids.
LifeBook helps you get to that. It helps you find your own personal philosophy. So, because everyone's different. We all are individuals, and that's what we need to do, is honor the individual, because diversity is what makes up our world. And that's kind of going against the grain these days, but I think that's where we're headed.
So Jon and Missy, I thought I heard through this process that it's impossible to have freedom without self-responsibility. Is that fair to say?
I think it's impossible to maintain it.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into too much because this is about you, but that's part of the problem nowadays is when people want to victimize themselves from other people and not take their own responsibility, they're actually giving up freedom to other people.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
That's exactly right. It's called the sanction of the victim.
Yeah, we're less than that.
Yeah.
Yes. And then taking too much freedom then causes other people to have more responsibility than they should have, which then puts more of a restraint or a limitation on other people. And it's not a mutually respectful way to live. Because if I take all the resources, or I damage your property, or I badmouth you, well, then if I'm doing that negative thing that is taking too much freedom, I'm stepping into too much of that, then that is not the feeling that anyone else wants to have, and I'm not going to have healthy relationships as a result.
Well, Rachel, that's our third rule. You've violated our third rule, which is you will not violate the rights of the people around you.
Right.
You have freedom when it comes to your own choices and actions. You do not put your stuff on other people because they have freedom too. And so, yeah, that's been a balance. And teaching your kids from a very early age that they are the authors of their own life. They are decision makers at the center of their own existence. You're not a passenger in this car. You're the driver of this car. When you're living in our house, we're obviously guiding you and helping you upon your life path. We're going to give you as much freedom as you can handle. What is the indication of that? How much responsibility are you able to take for yourself? If we give you freedom and you aren't able to handle it, you got a ticket for speeding, you didn't handle that situation right. Now that freedom's going to be taken away from you for a little bit until you can handle it again, you can try again. And it's worked like a charm for us. It really has.
Because freedom allows for them to be curious. It allows for them to develop their own their own essence, really. And so many times our parents can squish that. Teachers can squish that. Preachers, whoever, the authority can squish that. So we really give them free range as much as we can.
Well, Missy and I understood from a very, very early time in our relationship that we don't own our kids. Our kids are individuals. They own their own lives. We're here to be their stewards, and we have raised them like that.
As soon as possible. That's a big deal,
Well, I think what's really interesting about this whole idea is that a lot of times, coming back to the idea of family wealth, a lot of times people think, well, if I am a wealth creator, I'm somehow going out, I'm providing value, I'm being entrepreneurial, I'm serving the world, I'm giving them value, dollars are flowing into my life as a result, then, well, if I give that to my kids, then am I actually helping them to develop the same character, the same disciplines, the same responsibility in life, or am I just enabling them to use the money that I've given to them? And really, the ultimate goal of parenting, I think, is to create highly functioning humans in society that do own their own life story, that are their own hero, that understand their place in the world, and they then rise to do great things, and they kind of stand on our shoulders as the parents. Instead of being limited by what we've done, they stand and rise above that.
Right,
And
right.
That's exactly
Very
right.
well said. And I'll tell you that each situation is different and each kid is different, and the resources that need to be brought to bear on each situation is different. So that's a real custom mission to try to figure out what your specific kid with their specific talents, their specific passions, their specific limitations probably, how do you put that package together? And that's almost a kid by kid thing.
It is.
That's difficult to do in a formula driven way, but you can have these guiding principles that really help.
Yeah, for sure.
well, I love that you start from intentionality. And I even love that you share the whole LifeBook process first, because it's very important to have that intention in each area. And I think probably the main problem with people just living a life by default instead of by design would be just going through the motions, not really stopping to ask themselves those questions. What is important? And so they can't get to the values unless they ask those intentional questions. And so thank you for sharing that process.
I think that the before and after of going through that process is literally a different life. Before you go through the work of taking a look at the most important areas of your life and asking yourself those questions so that you can get on a path of self-discovery of your own beliefs and attributes, etc., and get totally dialed into the person you want to become and the life you want to live, that before and after process is literally tantamount to living a different life.
That's awesome. So as you're talking about sorry, Missy, go ahead. Were you saying something?
I was just going to say, it's all about consciousness. It's about bringing consciousness to, the reason we divide our life up into 12 categories is because your life is big and complicated, right? And there are 12 very important, there's a bunch of more categories, but there's 12 fundamental, they're not electives, they're necessary, right?
They're mandatory.
Yeah, if you're going to have an extraordinary life and a really conscious life, these are the 12. And you can see they're all one thing, your life. But what we do is we kind of dissect, we pull your life apart so that you can really get deeply conscious on every single one. Because what happens in the end, you realize you have discovered all of your own beliefs, all of your own values, all of your own, in every category. And that does, roll into one life. So it's a consciousness exercise, and it really does raise your level of consciousness because you dive deep. So it's a really...
That's esoteric, but it's also totally literal. That's totally literally what happens.
That's excellent. So let's come back to, you talked about the core values of your home. What character traits would you say are really important that you are hoping to instill in your children as you're parenting them and developing these great relationships for the purpose of hopefully them being great contributing members of society? What are those character traits that you focus on?
We've defined those clearly too.
Yes.
Here are the 4 character traits that Missy and I focused on for the last 33 years.
And again, we simplified them all down because these are roots. They're kind of like roots.
So we've been doing this for decades with our kids. So here's what we want to do. We want to raise independent, that's number 1, healthy, happy, courageous children. We feel that those are the traits that they need to thrive in the 21st century. Independence is number 1. Because they are their own unique individuals, and our job is to get them autonomous, to get them self-sufficient, to get them up and running as fast as possible, as fast as humanly possible.
And there's a lot in that one.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that one. That means they have to learn they have to personally develop themselves.
Yes.
They have to, it's not just like that one attribute. It's like, there's a lot in that one, right?
Well, you can see if our core value of our home is freedom, that one of the core attributes that we'd want to build into our kids is independence. Yeah. Those two are very, very tied together. It's about being autonomous.
Knowing how to make their own decisions based on their own values and their own intuition and stuff like that. That's what we're trying to really teach our kids. Who are you and what do you really want out there? And we'll help you get there.
And so that's a matter of not teaching them what to think. That's a matter of teaching them how to think so they can do it themselves. And that is something that too many parents fail to do in this day and age. There's almost no attention ever, even in school, paid to the laws of logic, reason, rationality, the rules of critical thinking, how to tell a bad idea from a good idea. This, to me, is the fundamental skill that's going to be required in the 21st century to navigate the shit show of information we got out there on the internet. If you don't have a semblance of that skill, you're done. And so, really teaching our kids how to be independent thinkers is a huge
and
thing.
their own individual, like becoming their individual human.
Exactly.
That's what that's all about. So there's a lot there.
So independent, then of course health. Healthy is about health and fitness and about intellectual, emotional, and physical well-being.
Relationships, your relationship to yourself, food, exercise, the whole gamut there.
Happy, that one's obvious.
Yeah.
Aristotle said that happiness is the aim and end of human existence, the whole purpose of human life. So that's a pretty big one.
That's a big one.
And then lastly, courageous, because we feel that the coming world is going to require courageous people. And we're sort of seeing less and less of that around us, people that are willing to stand up for their convictions. And I think that that's going to be an important part of the 21st century.
It also takes courage to do what we just said in those first three. So it takes courage to start moving around in the universe and seeing what's there.
It takes courage to take responsibility for yourself and to acknowledge that you're the decision maker at the center of your existence. No one's coming to make your life right. There is no knight in shining armor coming in to solve your problems. If you want a happy, healthy, fulfilling life, it is up to you to define what that life looks like and to figure out how to get there, because no one else is going to do it for you.
I love just the idea of owning your life requires courage. And I know for a fact that as I step into courage in various areas of my life, that I see so much fulfillment. Whereas when you don't bring courage, you don't get that same sense of satisfaction. And so
the universe rewards courage.
Yeah. It's almost like courage is a piece of self-esteem. It's the starter. It's like if you can just have enough courage to get going, then you can start your self-esteem motor, which is basically, it's your relationship with yourself. I said I'm going to do that. I did it. I crushed it. I'm going to do that again. Yeah. And that's how you build your own self-esteem.
Missy, that's very interesting, because I don't know if you know this. I actually was an educator and I was a teacher for 17 years before I got into this career. And it used to drive me crazy when a parent would say, well, you have to give them their self-esteem. And I would say, you can't give them self-esteem. It has to come from accomplishments within them. And so you have to put them in a position so that they accomplish something and that's how they get the self-esteem. You can't give self-esteem 100%. To anybody.
You are so right. Self-esteem has to be earned, and there's no way to fake it. Nathaniel Brandt's self-esteem is your experience of being competent to cope with the basic challenges of life. You can rise up to the occasion. I'm competent to cope with what comes at me, and the experience of being deserving of happiness. Yeah. The only way you can start to feel competent to cope with the basic challenges of life is to actually start coping with them and start to develop a good reputation with yourself. It can't be faked. It has to be earned. And that, I think, is one of your model of self-esteem that you just put on the table, where teachers and parents are saying, we've got to give our children self-esteem through participation trophies and all. It literally has the opposite effect. The opposite effect of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, you see it in people that are trying to do wealth creation by simply stockpiling money and then giving it to their children. I've seen this over and over about the children. Yes, they have money, but they almost feel inferior and have low self-esteem because they didn't do anything to create this.
And that's a recipe for disaster.
It is a very big recipe for disaster that I've seen. Now, what the other side of it is that I then see parents that have money that then feel like, I've failed the next generation. And they're older and they're like, I ruined my life and my children's life. And I try to talk to them and I'm saying, hey, okay, let's just say you have, okay? I'm not even going to argue with you because I don't know whether you did or not, but what are we going to do from now on, going forward? Let's stop talking about what I did and let's talk about what I'm going to do going forward. And so can you kind of tie all that together? Like it's a little bit what you said, taking self-responsibility early. But to get that message out to people that it's not too late to go through these.
It's never too late. It's never too late to plant a tree or to take responsibility for yourself. What's that?
Oh, there's a great Japanese quote. The best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. Yeah. The second best time is today.
Today.
Yeah. Exactly.
So one of my mentors, Nelson Nash, from the Nelson Nash Institute, he was a forester. from the University of Georgia, and he used that saying all the time because people say, "Oh, I wish I would have." He goes, "Well, the best time would have been that he actually used 30 years. Maybe he didn't want to step on the toes of that person. 30 years, but the next best day is today. So let's get started today."
Right.
Yeah.
So that being said, first of all, Missy and I are not good at the financial category from the standpoint of financial instruments or investing or anything that
we don't know.
Anything that has to do with the second layer.
Yes.
We're good at the first layer.
Yeah.
We know how to create wealth. We deeply understand the fundamentals of wealth creation. And before wealth can be taxed, before it can be invested, before it can be mooched, before it can be looted, before it can be redistributed, it's got to be created always. Before there can be the entire layer on top of it of buying and selling stocks and all the crazy wealth world, the fundamental premise of wealth is that it's got to be created by human beings at some point. And then it starts getting tossed around and manipulated. Mm-hmm. We're good at that. We're good at the foundation of it. So we've taught our kids deeply the fundamentals of wealth creation. And so they've got that instilled in them, and we're seeing them at their young ages starting to do some bullet shots out at some really wonderful projects. Our two older ones are dialed in, and they've got it going.
Channel, yeah.
Our two younger ones are still experimenting. But what we want to do is we want to help our kids learn how to create wealth, which is an expression. The fundamental of wealth creation to us can be summed up in the more you give, the more you get. That is the fundamental concept of wealth creation. The more you give, the more you get.
Yes.
Which I would add, it's based on self-actualization. Because in order to give, you have to find that within you. You have to find the best thing that you can serve up to humanity, to your brothers and sisters out here in the world, right? What is my service or product? How can I? So it's a very spiritual journey.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Yeah.
But you don't have to start with what is the best inside me that I can give. I mean, you should start there, but just getting on the path to wealth creation is what's going to make that self-actualization happen. Yeah. So basically what we tell our kids, and I'm talking about our young kids, our early teenagers, when they come to us and say, "Mom and Dad, how do we get it?" Well, I'm ready to make money.
Yeah.
All right, if you're ready to explore that, here are the questions to ask yourself. The first question is, what do I love doing? What am I passionate about? What would I do if I didn't even have to do it? What am I interested in? What am I fascinated by? Number two, what am I good at right now? What are my gifts? What are my talents? Then how can I take my passions and my talents and put them to work in the service of other people? Because fundamentally, wealth is about creating value for other human beings. Mm-hmm. But you need to be able, if you want to create wealth for yourself, if you want a nonprofit organization, you can stop there. This is what I'm good at, this is what I'm passionate about, and I can use these skills to create value for other people in the following way. If you actually want to enrich yourself, you have to ask one final question, and that's, how can I do that? How can I create value for other people with my talents in a financial model that works for me too, so that I can earn a profit proportionate to the value that I create for others? And that's simply a matter of building in a piece for you, making sure that you're taken care of in that equation. Because if you're not taken care of, you ain't going to be doing it for very long, and you're not going to be helping very many people.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work. The equation doesn't work. If it's not win-win everywhere, that's where it's off balance. It's like a natural law. If you don't have a balanced deal or a balanced offering, of some kind, then it's not going to work. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Yeah. You're not going to be able to do it for long.
That's right.
So we literally have our kids, our 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, make a list of everything they love doing. And I'm talking about playing video games can be on that list. That can. There are people that have made $1 billion on video games, right?
Kids are unbelievably creative if you let them be.
All the things you love, all the things you're fascinated about, all the things that you're good at, the talents that you have, the gifts that you've been given. Every idea that you can think of about how to take that stuff and create value for other people. And now let's take a look at maybe the 3 best ideas on that list and see if we can create a financial model around that will allow you to express the best that's inside of you for the benefit of others. And when they pay you for that good or that service, you make sure that you've got a little piece of profit built in for you, and that's what makes it sustainable. and that's the path to wealth. That's like the super simple parenting philosophy around wealth that we've shared with our kids. And
Hey, John, I don't know if you know Mike Michalowicz, but he actually has a book called Profit First. And he actually says to entrepreneurs, he dismisses this whole idea that, you have to go 5 years of pain before you even turn a profit.
I totally read the cliff notes for that book, and it was brilliant. It was a completely different concept of how to start a company.
Really?
Yeah, he literally starts the company with a profit first and builds around that.
Yes. And part of it is, first of all, you got to make sure that you're doing what you like, you love what you said, but you're also doing something that adds value, that that's going to generate revenue, not just something that you're hoping is going to work, so on and so forth, and you don't know if it's going to build value. And then you need to take a piece, off of it for you right away. Yes. And you have to design it for that from day one. Yes.
That's the opposite of what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
We pay everybody else, we put all the upfront money, and then there's nothing left for us. I like that.
Yeah, Missy, I say what most entrepreneurs do is they actually just buy themselves a job, and they're the lowest paid person at that job.
Exactly.
That is so true.
How much do you make? Well, whatever's left over is what I make, and it's usually very much.
Scraps.
What's so interesting is that I was going to bring up the same concept of profit first earlier when you guys were talking, because I heard the same philosophy and theory in there. And really, your clients want you to be successful. They want you to make a profit because they want you to stay in business, so you'll still be around to serve them next year and the following year and the year after. So
it's too bad that we have to apologize for profit. It's not clear at what point people started demonizing your ability to feed your own family through your labor, but that's just a bunch of crap that needs to be thrown away and gotten rid of in our society.
I agree.
Making a profit for your hard labor is the moral outcome.
Yes.
It's exactly right.
In my opinion.
And so it's too bad that got tweaked a little bit in human history, but we've really got to start preaching that that's the mechanism that makes all of this sustainable.
Jon and Missy, I remember you guys talking many years back. I came across your information and heard you guys talking about how important it is and how noble it is to desire to create wealth. And it was just really interesting that has really framed and supported a lot of my knowledge and my growth in terms of the idea of wealth creation. And when you were talking earlier, you mentioned that you're not focused on the tacticals or the strategies or the products of financial management.
Services, yeah.
But you understand the principle, which is the deeper layer. It's the root system for how to make wealth in the first place. And what's interesting, I want to connect that over to another idea. You're not saying, here I am, I'm mom and dad, I'm the patriarch and matriarch of this family. I'm going to build my wealth with my knowledge and my skills and abilities. And kids, you come on board with what I'm doing and you support this family business, and this will be your legacy. You're saying, how can I help you instead figure out what you're passionate about, what is interesting to you, and help you grow and flourish? And that same idea has come out in multiple areas and ways. We were talking to somebody named Keith Whitaker. He's written a book, or he's a co-author on a book called Total or Complete Family Wealth. And he talks about that same idea, this rising generation, not the original or the first generation wealth creators, but the ones that come up after them, and focusing on supporting them and their values and their life and their hero's journey. And what's interesting about that is every family that I've ever seen have strong, nurturing relationships and just really that legacy that you see streamed through multiple generations, they focus on supporting those goals and the mission of the next generation and the generations after. And so I see you guys doing that really well.
There is an overlap though, Rachel. There's a big overlap. And that is when our kids are young, it's extraordinary to have them involved in our businesses.
Oh, that's absolutely.
Right? They learn so much.
Right.
Yeah.
And but then as they start to really get a little bit more dialed into the channel of their own passions and their own talents, then they can start to explore with our support. So our son, Jordan, when he was a teenager, he made 2 really good records. We're a family of musicians. Jordan made 2 really good records, didn't make any money on them, but it's a year-long project to make a full-length album, and he did 2 of them. he also was very interested in the green rush in California when marijuana first got medicinally legal, and there was a green rush, right? Mm-hmm. So he tried that when he was like 19 years old, 18, 19. He moved out to California, but he was too late to take advantage of that. But he learned a ton about growing, basically. So what he ended up doing with his skills, he had serious audio engineering skills, and he knew a lot about growing. So he started a podcast called Growcast, mm-hmm. which has become the #1 podcast in the world for marijuana growers. And then from there, he came back and ran the podcast for our coffee company, Purity Coffee, mm-hmm. the healthiest coffee in the world. He came back and he's running our podcast for LifeBook right now, interviewing some of the greatest people on the planet. And so that's a perfect example of how they come and go through our companies. They learn what they need to learn. We support them going in their direction, and it just all ends up. We've got family businesses, but kids shoot off in different directions, and everybody's supporting everybody else. And it's just a really wonderful thing.
I love this question, this whole topic, because we actually are 3 generations of family. Like John's father, artist entrepreneur. He started a huge company. So John's one of 7 kids, right? So the kids came up, and it was kind of like what you said, the first idea. It was like, okay, kids, this is the business.
This is the family business.
This is what we're going to do,
This is what we got to work with.
Yeah, and it was, it's a huge opportunity. There's that. So if you have that big opportunity, so all the kids did work, even me when I was a teenager, I worked at that company. But that, and we are people that work with our families. Yeah. That's just what we do.
We believe in nepotism, 100%.
Yeah. Super
That's awesome.
Really, but here's I would say here's the key. You have to be good at relations. You have to be good at relationships, because if you're not, it's going to go off the rails immediately. You have to be able to relate to the other, and that's why I love, Rachel, how you're bringing this into wealth, because relationship to the other is like the first step in making anything happen. Making anything happen out there with someone else. It's so important.
Nepotism, there's nothing better when it works, and there's nothing worse when it doesn't. So you got to be careful with it. Yes. But it's so wonderful to work with your kids. It's so wonderful to work with your parents when you can make it work.
And like with our kids, they can work in any of our businesses if they want, if they have the skill, if they have the desire. But what we tell them is, if you're going to work for one of our companies, you have to work twice as hard, twice as long, and maybe you'll get paid the same, maybe you won't. But you have to, since you're our kid, you have to freaking put it in hard.
That's the opposite.
More responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the opposite of the normal nepotism role, where people are like, well, you can't really say anything to him because he's the son of the owner. We're like, if you're the son of the owner, you are setting the example of what an ideal employee is. You have more to prove than anybody else. So that's. And I really truthfully think that that's one of the things that makes nepotism work.
It does.
Because we really let those kids know, you're not going to come in here and set a bad example. You're going to be the ideal example if you're going to be doing this.
Or we'll fire you.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that exact idea is that you guys get it. You get that it's not about the money. It's really about the relationships. And ultimately, what I see you doing in that almost a mentoring type of position. As a parent, you're almost like a mentor to your kids to raise them up into being a successful adult and a successful human. But what I hear you guys doing is instilling that responsibility and making sure that they understand more than getting money. What they're really developing is that character. They're developing their muscle of figuring out how to provide that value to other people, which is definitely a learnable skill. It's not something that I think most people think of naturally when they think, I'm going to graduate high school and I'm going to go get a job and I'm going to, get a big fancy house and a big fancy car. And they think of all the things they're going to do with their money, but they don't think about how am I going to provide that value and what am I going to do to create the money in the first place. And I think that's the #1 most important thing to instill in your kids so that wealth can grow over generations and not just stay flat or shrink.
Yeah.
So I want to take this one more step. As we're talking about families, to have a family, you have to have individuals. To have wealth, you have to create value. What is the starting point of all of this? I know we talked at the beginning of the show before we went on the recording. We're talking about the importance of really focusing in on yourself as an individual and doing the individual work and taking that personal responsibility, not just being a great parent or a great spouse or a great business owner, but being a great person. Can you talk about that and how that plays into the work that you guys do at LifeBook?
Yes.
So are you asking how individualism plays into wealth creation is one of the components of that question?
Sure, you can go that
Okay,
direction.
well, the bottom line is, Rachel, it all starts with the individual.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean what you mean by, that doesn't matter what you mean by it. It all starts with the individual.
Yeah.
Wealth starts with the individual. Why? Because wealth must be experienced internally before it can be expressed externally. Michael Jordan made a ton of wealth because he could do what he did. It started in here. Every author, every painter, every product developer, it all comes from inside. The more you give, the more you get. It starts here. And it's the same with every form of human endeavor. You cannot have an extraordinary relationship without having two extraordinary individuals. You can't have an extraordinary collective of any kind without having extraordinary individuals in that collective. It all starts with you. The more you give, the more you get. If you don't have anything to give because you haven't developed yourself, if you have, if you just never spend any time thinking about your passions and your talents and how you can create value for other people, and you're weak from the standpoint of being able to contribute, you're not going to get a whole lot back ever in any area of your life.
And I mean, I like to think about it like this: a community of people, a community. That is one thing, but you can't have a community without individuals, right? You can't have that thing without each individual being part of that. And it's like we're all each here to bring forth something that we have inside of us I always say serve,
That's good,
to give, to
create value,
to share,
create value is really
value. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like the more you can go inside and really get your personal development going on and discover who you are and what you want, the more you have to bring up and offer, because you know what it is. So, okay, I'm sorry. Our dog is barking.
That's okay. Don't worry. Go ahead.
I lost my train of thought. Anyway, we were just talking about the individual. What else did you want to say about that?
Well, I basically think I said it. My philosophy is that everything starts with the individual, period, and that's what LifeBook is. LifeBook is an individual journey where you're gonna go deep in. It's a process of self-discovery, but it's also a process of self-creation. It's both. So the self-discovery aspect is a matter of discovering and understanding things about you and accepting things about yourself. The self-creation aspect is bringing intention to the person that I'd like to become and the life that I'd like to live. And that'll affect everything that you do, from your career and financial life to your relationships to how you take care of yourself physically. It expresses out from inside.
Did you always have 12 categories, or did you have less and then you expanded, or more then brought it back down? Tell us a little bit about the development of the 12.
LifeBook was born out of a pretty difficult time in my life. When I was in my early 30s, 25 years ago, I had a pretty much a nervous breakdown. It was a severe anxiety disorder that generalized, and I was housebound. I literally had agoraphobia for a few months. I couldn't leave my house. I was screwed. And I was CEO of a couple big companies, so it was really a mess. I had to take time off, and that's when I started studying personal development. That was the very beginnings of LifeBook. So the first year that I was doing this, I was literally just collecting notes from the great programs that I was doing, and I eventually started to categorize them.
Yeah.
Right? So here's my love notes, here's my health notes, here's my money notes, here's my career notes, here's my parenting notes. And so those categories sort of started to evolve. And then at some point early on, I asked myself, okay, if I want to do more than just heal and be okay again, if I want to really create an extraordinary life that works at a high level in every important area, what are the most important areas that I really have to master, or at least get my head wrapped around in order to have an extraordinary life? That's the year we did deep thinking and came up with this 12 category methodology.
That's just so awesome. So as I think LifeBook is one of the ideal ways to do that deep work. Tell us a little bit more about what LifeBook is and how somebody would connect with you guys to get started and get involved.
Okay. All you got to do is Google search LifeBook Online. Mm-hmm. LifeBook Online is offered by Mind Valley, our partner. Mm-hmm. LifeBook Online is a 6-week online course where you're doing 2 categories a week. So there's 12 categories you're going to examine, 2 categories a week. And basically what it is it's a 90-minute interactive video where you're doing a deep dive in health and fitness. And by the time you're done with that category, you'll have defined your beliefs, your vision, your purpose behind that vision, and the strategies you need to, the things you need to do in order to achieve that vision. And so that it goes that way through the whole course. The offer is really interesting. We've got an unprecedented offer. It's one of the most successful offers online right now, which is basically the LifeBook course. It was a $1,295 course when we first introduced it. Now it's free with accountability. That's what we call it, free with accountability. $500 security deposit. And if you finish the course, if you go all the way through the 6-week course and finish it, you can request your money back in full and get a full refund. And that's how LifeBook is free. Now, at the end of that, we make you another offer to go into our 2nd level course in our membership, and you'll be in love with the process by then. So most people continue to move on. But if you want your money back, you can get your money back. And the reason we do that, Rachel, is because our mission is 1 million people with a LifeBook, period. That's what we're doing on this planet.
I love that.
Even if you go through LifeBook and don't continue your journey with us and get LifeBook for free, you've helped us get one step closer to our mission. And that's why we've got that offer.
Because we're trying to turn that personal responsibility switch. We don't tell people this right out of the gate because people aren't so in love with, oh, I have to take responsibility for myself. But really, truly, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people flip that switch. And it's very much like what Bruce was saying earlier. You can't do this for other people. You can't give them self-esteem. You can't even teach them how to take responsibility. You can show them, you can talk about it, but they literally have to have an aha moment inside where they're like, oh, this is my world. This is my life. Okay, got it. So it's what we're doing though is we want to really wake people up, because if we have 1 million turned on, self-responsible people that are creating beautiful beauty out there in the world, that might just make a difference. So that's really one of our missions.
And what separates LifeBook
so awesome.
from everything else out there, which is what Missy just alluded to, is we do not tell you what you should believe. We do not tell you what you should think. We do not. We share our stuff and some of the stuff of the LifeBook community simply to inspire you, to encourage you, and to motivate you on your journey. But make no mistake about it, you are the author of your LifeBook. This is an empty system that you fill up with your own stuff.
It's a Socratic system, yeah.
Which is why everybody is in love with it after they're done with it, because they've written a 120-page book about them, about the person that they want to become and the life that they want to live. They're crystal clear on where they're going, and they know exactly what they need to do to get there. So that's what makes the LifeBook system very, very different from other personal development.
That's exactly right. It's holistic. And just going through that process without even doing our mastery course or joining our membership, just doing the thinking and getting clear, bringing that consciousness, people's lives transform. Like they start living.
I can see why.
Yeah, they become conscious of what they're doing, what they want. It's a miraculous kind of thing that happens.
That is so awesome. And they get to learn from you guys on a regular basis, which is so, so cool. And you said, so that's packed into 6 weeks. So how much time, I'm curious, how much time would you say somebody would need to commit? I mean, this sounds like a 24-hour or it sounds like a 24/7 commitment over those 6 weeks, just because there's so much that you're doing.
The LifeBook course consists of 14 videos, and they're kind of full-length videos. They're an hour to an hour and 20 minutes. So your average week would be, okay, this week is about my financial life and my career. Those are the 2 categories I'm exploring this week. You got to choose the time and day and the place where you will not be disturbed, because this is a deep friggin' dive. It's going to take you about a total of 75 to 90 minutes, an hour and a half max. And you watch the video. Built into that video, it's an interactive video. So we're asking you the questions that you need to answer, and your answers to the questions that we ask you in the videos, that is your LifeBook. That's the copy in your LifeBook. So we're leading you through this process. It takes about 3 hours a week to do 2 categories.
Yeah, 3 to 4.
And at the end of that process, you'll be blown away at what you've created. You will be blown, and the thinking that went into it will change your life forever.
Well, because it changes your mind. I mean, it really does. It turns on your.
You go to the next level of consciousness in your own life.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, what's just so interesting, you guys mentioned the Socratic method. I feel like we could talk all day, but just the idea that you're unconsciously confronting people with their own answers, which then is 1,000 times more valuable than you giving them the answer, because that would go in one ear and out the other and have no transformation. But the second you ask a question where somebody has to think through the answer themselves, all of a sudden they go leaps and bounds in growth. So,
and the reason that that's so important is because, again, the fundamental premise of LifeBook is a deep respect for the individual. We're not after a bunch of cookie cutter philosophies here. When you ask those questions to the individual, you'll get a different answer from every single person. And that's what we're after.
That's the beauty.
We're after helping people self-actualize in their own lane, right? So every LifeBook is different because every person is different. And that's the beauty of this system. And then we share our best practices and knowledge with each other, and it goes crazy.
That is just so awesome. And again, we have 3 minutes before we need to be wrapped up completely on this show. But what's just so interesting about that is asking questions is where we start with a financial picture as well. If somebody talks to us and says, how can we up level in our financial life? How can we increase our cash flow? How can we store our cash in a better bank or a better system so that I can access this capital and it has growth and safety and liquidity? And these are the things that we do on a regular basis in our work. And then this connects over as well just to the idea that as you're creating this legacy in your family, as you're doing the most good for your kids and generations and generations and generations after you, really it comes down to saying, how can I really have my value system solid? How can I then put this tactical legal framework in place so that I can actually transition the wealth to them, the money part of the wealth? And then how can I maximize the wealth that then enables them to live their best life, this like seed capital to start and fuel their growth. And that is something that can be perpetual.
I'm going to share the one little financial strategy that we're pretty proud of that's in our estate plan. Like I said, we don't do especially any kind of tricky or fussy investments, nothing complicated. We're about making money and being very conservative with how we use that.
You guys are so smart.
We're not good investors in most areas. We got a couple interesting areas of expertise. But this is the one strategy that I want to share with you because I know a lot of parents struggle with that. In our estate plan, when it comes to how much money we leave our kids, what we've done is we've put a provision in there that our estate plan will match their income. So if you want to be a surfer and work at a surf shop and earn $36K a year, we're going to be matching that $36K. You want to roll up your sleeves and start a company and really go for it, your income's going to be met. Whatever you do, we're going to enhance that, but you're the driver. You're the decision maker. You're the one that gets to decide how far you want to go. We're not giving you enough money so that you don't have to do, anything. We want to use this money to enhance your personal development and enhance your self-actualization. So we're
That's
pretty
awesome.
proud of it.
I'd actually never heard of that strategy before, but it's a beautiful one. And I love that you built in the responsibility or the catch or the redirect back onto the path. And there's nothing wrong with working in a surf shop. If that is
free lunch, baby.
Right. Right. It's just so obvious that you guys are very intentional in every area of your life. And I think it's just super refreshing. So I just want to thank you and just honor you both for doing the life work on yourselves and being that model and being that leader where you're leading yourself, the hardest person in the world to lead. And you're saying then now I'm leading others to be able to develop this kind of relationship in their family and instill these values in their kids and just all around be an awesome person. So thank you guys so much for that.
It's been great to spend this time with you guys as usual.
Thanks for having us on, you guys. We really, anytime, we love being with you guys.
Bruce, nice to see you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You too, buddy.
Awesome.
Take care, guys.
Thank you so much. In closing, please remember success leaves clues. So model the successful few, not the crowd, and build a life and business that you love.
Beautiful.
Love it. Take care.